Okay, the meeting is now recording, and I'll take the swearing for the Clydesdale Area Committee held today on Tuesday the 16th of November 2021. And rather than read out the names, everyone is present with the exception of Councillor McCallan, who submitted his apologies. In terms of officers, we have Alistair McKinnon, Kirsty Maguire, Laura Mitchell, Karen MacLeod and myself, Susan Somerville. We also have George Kirkcaldy, who's the Station Commander at Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Thanks, Chair. I'll now hand back to you for today's business.
Thank you, Susan. Right. Well, then, first of all, item 2, which are the minutes of the previous meeting.
Chair, can we just check if we've got any declarations?
Oh, yes, sorry. Declaration of interest. Sorry. Right, Julia, yes?
Yes, if I could declare an interest on item 6.2.1A and 6.2.1E. That's Lanark Development Trust and Braehead Village Trust. Thank you.
Right. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? What are you, just a quick question, Lanark Development Trust. Is this forcing me to step out and let Mark take over at this point?
I think that'd be a matter for you, Chair, but it is a community grant application for both organisations. I believe Councillor McClymont also has her hand up for declaration of interest, Chair.
Okay, is that so? Catherine, you're muted.
Yeah, I was doing one thing at a time. Give me time. Lanark Community Development Trust. I'm a member of that, and I am an advisor to them, and that's my only declaration. Thanks.
Right. Well, on that basis too, then, Mark, you will need to take over because I guess I'm in the same boat as the other two. I'll need to make my declaration. So we'll make those the two very last points in the meeting, okay? So that you can take over at that point, and I'll absent myself as well.
Okay, Chair.
Okay, fine. Right. Thanks for reminding us, Susan. Okay, now minutes of the previous meeting. Then, has anybody got any points on those minutes? No, in which case I would propose that those minutes are accepted and need a seconder.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we've got 3 items for noting. The first one is detector legislation, and we have George Kirkcaldy, who is Station Commander, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, who will take the floor. Now, George, you've got a presentation, I think. Are you going to take the screen?
Has someone managed to get a hold of the actual presentation? You can put it off for me, please. I think it was sent on already. If not, I'll try and get a hold of it myself.
No.
I do have a copy, so if you're struggling, I can share it.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Okay, just bear with me. Can everyone see it okay?
Yep.
Okay, you'll need to prompt me whenever you want me to move on.
No problem. I'm not going to hold you up too long with this. This was actually a request by the group commander, who for the Pan Lanarkshire area now, because obviously North and South have now become one area. So what he's asked is that we attend all the local area meetings to give an understanding of how this detection system is going to be put in place and who's going to be putting it into the premises and what we're requesting. So basically what was, as you can see, there's a tolerable standard for in relation to what we expect within a premise. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next screen, please. So the Housing Scotland Act 1987 Tolerable Standard Extension of Criterion Order 2019 introduced a new element, and that was the introduction of a smoke and heat alarms in the tolerable standard as a recognition of danger fire possesses to occupants of a house and is intended to reduce the risk of the loss of life, injury, damage to property in the event of a fire. So if you wouldn't go to the next slide, please. So obviously, following the work that was done through the Grenfell Tower, a ministerial working group on building and fire safety was formed. Now, one of those recommendations was that we actually had a proper linked system for warning people. Most of the local authorities' housing should have linked systems. Now, what we're now asking is that those homeowners are now going towards getting this linked system. Now, we brought this legislation in. It's coming into obviously 2022, but it was initially going to be coming in 2021. But it was a bit of, due to the pandemic, there was obviously a bit of kind of a panic about this information coming out. Now, personally, I've had, I was working in Dumfries and Galway at the time, and initially there was a lot of misinformation being put out. There was a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon, electricians basically kind of putting fear into people about getting this type of detection put in place. So we're just trying to allay the fears of how we would be fitting them into premises. So could you go to the next slide, please? So, as you said before, the legislation comes in 2021. However, in light of the difficulties we obviously had in relation to the COVID issues. So, however, installing alarms at the earliest opportunity will provide improved fire safety in the home. So what we were trying to do is that we've had alarms in the service since well before 2021. We were doing initial training to basically fit these systems, because they are quite complex for the personnel at the station to try and get them all linked up initially. If you don't do it right, it can cause problems, and so we've got to spend a bit of time understanding how to fit these systems. Okay, so next slide, please. Sorry. So what we require is that we want one smoke alarm installed in the room that is most frequently used for the general daytime living purposes. Now, this can change because obviously we have individuals who may be bedbound, and that's where they are living is within their own home, owner-occupied premises. So they're within their own bedroom. So that would be classroom as their most frequently highlighted place where they would be living. We also want a smoke alarm in the landings on each of the floors, and we want a heat alarm installed in every kitchen. Now, they've all got to be interlinked. We also request that you have a carbon monoxide detector placed in the kitchen. That doesn't need to be linked, but we just need to make sure that you have it within the premises. Okay, next. Obviously, the tamper-proof long-life lithium battery types we are fitting, that we fit, they obviously have a 10-year warranty, but they are a wee bit slightly more expensive. The mains wires obviously are cheaper, but the cost that you have to put get installed by an electrician is obviously the downside of it. But the tamper-proof lithium batteries is what we currently put in at the moment, but as I say, eventually at some point they have to be replaced. So that's sort of the cost of the householder. So installation, it's at the occupant's responsibility as the owner to meet the new fire and smoke alarm standard. As always, when it's been private rented houses, the landlord has the responsibility to install these systems in place. Local authorities have been doing it for quite a number of years. There has been differences in different local authorities. Some have had obviously just an alarm within a hallway, upper floor, but never actually linked to a heat detector. And I know a lot of local authorities are now catching up with this. They're now catching on and understanding that everything needs to be linked. So, as I said, the SFR are fitting interlinked high-risk owner-occupied homes. Now, we're getting a lot of people who obviously see the legislation coming through and see the adverts on TV, and think that the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service are policing this. We are not. We are supporting the Scottish Government. It's a Scottish Government request that they want all homeowners to have these types of alarms fitted in their premises, and we're willing to support. But again, we have a criteria that we will fit high risk smoke detector in the premises. I'll just give you a wee idea of exactly what that is. I've got a wee note here. So the occupant that meets has to meet 2 or more criteria. One is being over 50, living alone, a smoker, long-term health, mobility issues, uses medical oxygen, evidence of heavy alcohol use. Now, so these are one of the most of the criteria. Now, we have had people come to stations who've just obviously seen the information on TV and said, can I have a smoke detector? When you ask them the question, you ask them if they're owner occupied or a local authority, they'll say the local authority, but you need to highlight that they have already got a linked system in their house. So they just seem to think that this is a new thing that needs to be replaced what they've already got. So we're just trying to get that message across them as well. We're trying to also allay the fears of them as well, because, as I said before, there was a bit of people trying to profiteer from people, putting them at, and we are trying to support them as much as possible and get the right information to them and direct them to it. So, next slide. So, anything else? Any questions you want to ask? And I'll be quite happy to try and help you.
Susan, do you want to remove the presentation and then we can see the full screen?
Yes, certainly.
I see the first. There's a couple of hands up, I think.
Well, that's right. I don't know. I can't see who on earth they are at the moment.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get back in. That's it.
I think so. David, Councillor Shearer, I think.
Right.
First.
David, on you go.
Yep. Thank you. And thanks, George. As the chair of Care and Repair in South Lanarkshire, Care and Repair are assisting in the fitting of these interlinked alarms. Our criteria is very similar to your own, George, but it's over 60s and the disabled.
Mm-hmm.
And we do fit them at a much reduced cost because we have to buy the materials to fit them. But we are out there to, and I think in some cases we actually work with the fire brigade to fit. In certain circumstances we'll fit it, but I know you guys are going out there and highlighting it. I know you don't police it, but I suspect it'll be part of the home report should you ever wish to sell your home, that you have to have these things fitted. And I suspect also that home insurance may well be dependent upon it in the years to come. If you can't tell your insurer, yeah, it's fitted, I'm safe, they might not insure it.
Yeah, I understand that. Yep.
So I think there, but you're right, George, to say that there was a lot of misinformation and not deceitful, but I think a bit of profiteering from the private sector that says, oh, we'll do it, but we'll do it at a much inflated price. I think there is mechanisms out there to help people who are in need of these alarms to be fitted. So just to highlight that and to make the connection, Chair. So thank you.
Yeah, could I just reiterate that that's obviously regarding the alarm systems. There is a lot of companies out there who I've been told by my own group commander that Screwfix were actually doing a good deal on some of them. If people know if they're wanting those installed, that's where you can get them from. But regarding insurance, we've still wouldn't have that clarification as to what's going to happen in the future, because obviously it's a Scottish law, and how how obviously the insurance companies sometimes they pick up things quite quickly and they'll jump on that bandwagon. So we don't really know how it's going to impact in the future with that. But obviously we've got very limited. Can I just say, if any of your partners or in your teams are actually requesting individuals to get a home safety visit, please can you make sure that the home safety visit form is actually filled out correctly, because we get questioned, and a number of guys have actually done the fitting of the installations, but the way the form, it comes up where you can either have the high, medium or low risk. Initially the document that we had was a medium risk after the information that was put in incorrectly. So when we went in, we were getting questions saying, why are you fitting a smoke detector into a medium risk premises? But when you actually asked the individual and get more clarity, then you then realised the individual was actually in the high risk category, and it went the opposite way. So it's just trying to make sure that if you are putting someone in as a high risk, then make sure that the information is there and it's true and accurate, because that's what we're kind of having this kind of fight back from our management teams, because they are expensive systems that we are actually fitting. So we just want to make sure we're getting the right people. So I've got another. Yep.
Right, I've got. I think it was with Catherine. You had your hand up,
Catherine.
I took it down because David. Well, the question hasn't really been answered, I suppose, but it was about the home report and insurance, etc. If nobody's policing it, I just didn't see the point. To be quite honest.
I do see, as I said, there's a bit of scepticism, but I think it's a Scottish government. They are saying that when you actually look deeper into it, it says the local authorities are supposed to be the ones that are managing it. I know, I can see your face. Obviously, it does actually say that it was the local authorities have the responsibility. So I'm not really sure. As I say, we were getting a lot of the kind of a bad press as if Scottish Fire Service is doing this and doing that, but as I say, we were just following Scottish Government guidance.
Oh, that's fine. No surprised.
Okay, thank you. Eric, you have a question?
Yeah, well, I actually have a couple of questions, really. I mean, as far as I was aware, it is now, or as of February, it's the law that every household has to have these systems fitted, not just high risk. It's everybody, I believe, isn't it? Yes. And so that's the first thing. But yeah, nobody may police it, but I will bet my bottom dollar that the insurance companies will eventually get onto this and will start to turn around and say, if you haven't got one, then your insurance policy is invalid. And that could invalidate an awful lot of insurance policies. That will in itself self-police it, I would think. But only if people realise that. But my question was, you're doing installations for high-risk people, and Care and Repair are doing installations for high-risk people. Where should one direct somebody who comes to us looking for help and advice in getting these things fitted, either if they're old, disabled, high-risk, or if they're not? Where should we sort of be directing them?
If you're trying to, if you're wanting, obviously local authorities will deal with their tenants.
Yeah, I think that's already been done.
Yeah, we will deal with and try and support individuals who are owner-occupiers if they're at risk, and we will try and support them in the way. We'll never leave a house without a smoke detector. What we'll end up doing is if they don't come into that high risk, we'll always leave them with a standard smoke detection within the premises. But again, the long term, we would be down to the individual to try and look for these systems in the future. As I say, we don't know how this is going to pan out in relation to how the insurance company is going to try and take us to task with it, or put that clause in about how much they're going to charge you extra, or how much they're going to, so we just need to sit and wait at this present time.
Once the legislation comes into place, if you hand out smoke detectors that are not interlinked, and therefore not compliant with the law, is that going to still be a?
No, they're fine. They are fine. It's really the high risk ones. We're trying to make sure that they're fully, that the individuals that can listen and hear a smoke detector and get out of their house, and a standard smoke detector is sufficient. It's the ones who are non-mobile and unable to self-evacuate. This is where we're really at risk.
Yes, But if you if you give somebody a smoke detector that's not compliant with the new law, and their house burns down, and their insurer turns around and says you didn't have the alarms, where would that leave the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service in a liability position? I think that would be you put yourself in quite a difficult position then.
But the thing is, we're still currently installing these detectors anyway, right up to even with the interlinked systems, we're still providing smoke detectors throughout the premises.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go to somebody's house and then they don't qualify for you to come and fit it, and you leave them a smoke alarm, and their house burns down, and their insurer says, but this isn't compliant with the current legislation, the legal requirement to have a linked system, I think I understand that. You might find yourself in a difficult position.
But it's also the responsibility of the individual who owns the premises.
Absolutely.
Yep. So it's their responsibility. We will provide them with a detector, but that is, even when we leave them with a detector, it's still their responsibility thereafter to maintain it. It's not our legislative requirement that we must go back and replace these smoke detectors week in, week out, or month in. We are there to give them our first line of attack, to support them, and that's all we're doing.
But I suspect you'll get a line of attack that will say, but the fireman came and he gave me this, and I fitted it, and the house burned down, and the insurance company still won't pay out. That's where I think there'll be a problem.
Yeah, but there's also the catch-22 situation where we turn around and say, well, I went to the house and I never left them a detector, so we're either way.
I left them advice that they have to comply with the law, is probably. Yeah. That's probably the way you would get yourself off the hook.
Okay, Julia, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, that the responsibility lies with the homeowner, and any support given by the fire service would be alongside advice of what the current regulations are. But just to answer Councillor Holford's question about where to direct constituents with inquiries, the South Lanarkshire Council website will offer advice on homeowners, private landlords, social landlords, and also direct towards care and repair for those who are vulnerable and meet the criteria. So there is full information and direction on the Scottish Government regulations and any information you might require on our own website.
Okay, I just got one point, George. Is there going to be available some form of control over these prices? I mean, after all, everyone's going to be forced to do it. So there needs to be if you like, a recommended band of costs and prices and recommended fitters and things. Is there going to be access to something like that? Because, I mean, there's a wealth of difference if you've got interlinked detectors between pulling someone's house apart to put wires up, and also the modern systems which are all Bluetooth and a hell of a lot cheaper to fit. People are going to want to know that, and they're not going to want to be ripped off, if you like, by the cowboys that are all going to come into this.
Again, there's a lot of information on I've got a couple of documents here I've actually got, but they explain that they do highlight that the Wi-Fi systems are slightly more expensive, and they may become more expensive in the long term because you can't just go up and take the battery out. You need to take the whole unit out. So they probably are trying to direct you towards going for a qualified electrician to get them installed. There's a lot of good electricians out there who'll do it, reasonable prices. But again, it's just been, I wouldn't just go out and just go straight away to someone and go, I want that, I want this done. Again, shop around, look about who's a reputable. We don't actually recommend anybody on the system because we're not allowed to. But to say, it's just a case of be aware that there is a lot of cheaper systems out there. They are good. They're all still within this British standard. But at the moment, as and when years go down the line, it's like everything that gets cheaper as it goes on because the technology moves on so quick. So I know it's a big bang rate at the moment, but it's just the way it seems to be at the moment.
I'm just looking at how you can protect people from being ripped off, that's all, and if there are guide prices and so on and so forth that are going to be made available, but maybe not possible.
No, it's probably not possible to say, but a case of looking on any of the kind of companies that are hardware companies that they've all got prices that are ranging from 1 unit to a band of units. Sorry, which all costs different prices. I've tried to do it myself. I've not even got I've got normal detectors in my own home, and I'm trying to price things out myself. So it's just it's kind of a hard for a lot of people, and I understand that's where obviously they pushed it back a bit because everybody was in a situation where they're going, I don't know if I'm going to have a job next year and so on during the pandemic, so it's, as I say, that it's costly, and it's I wouldn't say it's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing in the long term, and I think it's the right way to move. But as I say, it's just trying to make sure we get the right costs. As I say, all your local authorities, fire service, will all try our best to try and help these people and support them. But again, it's how we go about it and how cheap we can make it for them.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't see any other hands up.
Well, thanks for your time then. I'll just get away and let you continue on with your meeting.
Yeah, good. Thanks very much, George. Right. Okay. We'll move on. Now, the next one we're looking at is the participatory budgeting, which is pages 9 to 24, item 4, education resources. And I think Laura Mitchell is in the frame for that. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for your time. It's nice to be here to update you all on education resources, update on the participatory budgeting with regards to the Pupil Equity Fund, and a wee update for you there, which we're asking you to note today. So I'll just take you through the report. The schools within the Clydesdale area have allocated £94,416.76 of their £1.2 million pay for allocation, and that's kind of outlined in Appendix 1. And you'll see there that there's a breakdown there for each of the learning communities as well, that you can see from there. Appendix 2, I'll lead you to that page, outlines, it kind of summarises the percentage of PEF allocation. So you can see that the majority of schools within the Clydesdale area, 29 in total, have allocated the 5%, but actually some of our schools have actually allocated a wee bit more than that, with 4 at 7% and 3 actually allocating as much as 10%, which is really good to have stakeholders have this amount of money to be able to look at in much more greater depth. A further school-by-school breakdown is outlined in Appendix 3, and it tells you exactly which schools. So you can see, for example, in the first page that Abingdon Primary are one of the schools that have allocated the 10%. So it gives you a breakdown for each of the learning communities so that you know exactly how much each of the primary and the secondary schools have allocated in terms of a percentage, but as well as a cost. So schools, since I last reported, have undertaken a rigorous consultation process with stakeholders led by a participatory budgeting stakeholder group, which consists of pupils within the school, a staff, 1 or 2 staff members, and also parents. They have been involved in that stakeholder group, and we've been really blown away by some of the examples of how they have engaged stakeholders in collecting the ideas. So I've outlined some of them. I wanted just to give a specific example for the Clydesdale area. Rigside Primary and Lanark Grammar School actually collaborated with this. And Lanark Grammar staff actually came out to the community of Rigside and they worked together. They were out on the streets and they actually spoke to the parents. They had teas and coffees and things to actually gather their views. So that's one example of quite good and innovative practice where a high school has actually went out to one of the local communities to really gather some of those views. And especially when it is to do with our Pupil Equity Fund and really trying to reach some of those families. So that's really good to see. Other examples are some of our Google Forms, Jamboards, kind of electronic post-it note boards, and a sort of mind map ideas with pupils. Then the schools engaged the stakeholders in the voting process, and again there was a real mix of what schools did here. Some schools went down the electronic form. Most of our secondary schools did this because obviously with much more pupils and staff and parents it's harder to reach in a paper vote. So a lot of our secondary schools use things like a Google form. Some of our primary schools use more kind of paper-based options and even some sort of hands-on where, like for example, they had a display up on the wall where pupils could actually put a sticker up or put a lolly in the stick of which which of the items that they wanted to do. So Appendix 3 kind of outlines exactly what the outcome of the vote was for each of our schools. So you can see there was a wide range of different things, ranging from curricular visits to outdoor learning resources to mental health, quiet spaces. One school's looking at increasing the uptake of free school meal entitlement, looking at kind of sports resources and things like that. So there's examples there of what they have actually outlined to be their vote. And then in Appendix 4, right at the back, we've split up there to see what the actual proportion of the votes were. So for the Clydesdale area, 81% of our pupils actually voted, which I think is a really healthy number, and 75% of our staff voted. It was really difficult for schools to pinpoint what the percentage of parents, because we've got parents from, some families are divorced, and parents, we don't really know roughly how many parents we have sometimes in our schools, but you can see there that we've actually got 1,841 parents and carers did actually vote. So although we don't have the percentage, we've got the numeric there to say that a large number of our parents actually voted. And that kind of gives you a breakdown. So the majority of the vote was from pupils, then by parents, and then by school staff. And that kind of gives you a wee breakdown there. In terms of the support that has been available for schools, we've had a Microsoft Teams page for our participatory budgeting leads in schools, where we've been able to signpost schools and answer their questions. We've also shared some good practice. So some schools, for example, did a PowerPoint presentation with some of their parents, and they shared that, and we've been able to signpost schools to different things that have been really working. We've also been tweeting the participatory budgeting work on our @SLC Equity Twitter feed, and you'll see a lot, if you've been on that at all or follow us, there's quite a lot of examples of good practice out there of how schools have actually engaged with the process. And again, we've been using that to share good practice. So where we're at the moment, our schools are now progressing with their spend to ensure that the minimum 5% is spent in full. Because it is pupil equity funding, and we've got to keep within the realms of the Scottish Government national guidance around the pupil equity funding, schools are now putting a clear rationale in place that they're sending back to the Central Equity Team that explains how it's going to close the poverty-related attainment gap, how what they voted for is going to benefit our pupils most affected by poverty, and that's coming back into us. We're also going to collate some examples of some good practice, some specific school examples that we can share with you as case studies at a future date. So that's really where we're at the moment, a quick whistle-stop tour of the process to date, and I'll now take any questions.
Laura, I have a question. When I look at the numbers, you've got the allocation at the beginning. It says that this year we've used about 94,000 of approximately 1.2 million, and everyone has gone for the minimum 5%. And I suspect that's because they're not really sure what they're going to spend it on, and they've just gone for the minimum just to put a number in place. But I think the PEF year, doesn't it? It runs till middle of next year. So I'm just thinking that, are we going to finish up in the same place as we do, for instance, with some of the grant stuff in the area committee, where we've got a pot of money which is in danger of not being used up? And I understand that this money is on the use it or lose it basis. It doesn't roll forward, and if it isn't used, that's it. So I'm just wondering how you, if you like, are going to get from 94,000 to 1.2 million at the present rate of progress, and what plans there are, and how you disseminate this and encourage more schools to use it, and so on and so forth.
So the 1.2 million is what all of those schools are allocated in terms of their pupil equity funding. So they've got plans in place for, so basically schools were asked that they would allocate at least 5%. And you can see from the figures, some schools have allocated more, some schools have allocated less, and they've put that to the vote. But the other, say they put 5% towards participatory budgeting, the other 95% of their pupil equity fund, the school agrees that with their stakeholders as normal, and they've got plans in place for full spend of that. So for the participatory budgeting 5% plus the 95% of the other part of their pupil equity fund, we would expect full spend by the end of the financial year. But there is a wee bit of flexibility. Sometimes there are some wee issues around maybe procuring an item, or there's been some staffing issues and they've had a wee bit, they've not managed to spend it by the end of the financial year. They do get a wee bit of leeway where if there's exceptional circumstances that they can carry forward some of that money to spend between March and June by the end of the academic year, and we would expect full spend by then. So it's our job as a kind of equity team just to keep a wee eye on the finances and to support schools as best they can so that we've got that full spend by the end of the academic year at the absolute latest.
Okay, thank you. You had your hand up.
It's okay, Chair. Laura's just answered the question. It was to do with carryover funding for to take account of the full academic year.
Right. Have anybody else got any questions? I see no hands up. Oh, hang on. Someone's come up under my +3. I can't see who it is.
I have my hand up.
I can't see you. Right. On you go.
Eileen.
Yeah.
I know, Eileen. Yeah, I can't see you with your hand up there, but carry on. Sorry, I can't see it on my screen.
Sometimes it goes on and I have to watch what I'm doing here. Thanks very much for that. And at the last school meeting that we had at Carluke High School, they were discussing it, and they were discussing methods of how they would have to engage or how they were going to engage to make sure it was, as many people as they possibly could being involved. But is the authority going to just leave the schools to get on with that? My biggest fear is always, like everything else, that you will get some people engaging and the others who might have good ideas and might want to, or could or should probably be involved, but they just sit back a wee bit because they're a wee bit strange or shy at coming forward. So is it just to be left with you just doing the nuts and bolts, or will the schools need to show actively how they're engaging or trying to engage with people or the pupils and the parents, to become involved in it, because it's quite a chunky money and it is an important thing.
Thanks. It's an interesting question. Yeah, no, but the schools will certainly not be left. We support them with their whole pupil equity fund the whole year. So the participatory budgeting part of that is something that we will continue to support them with to ensure that they are fully engaging as much as they can. There has been some really interesting conversations that we've had already with our schools who they're saying that participatory budgeting group that they started for the consultation and the voting process, that's going to remain throughout the whole year, because that pupil and parent group are going to be involved on procuring the things that they're looking for and implementing them and marketing them as they kind of come to force. The other side of it, as well as a central equity team, we ask schools to report on the progress at 2 points in the year. So they report on progress at December time, and they also report on progress in June time. And they've got to put in there what the impact of their pupil equity spend is. And part of that will be the impact of this participatory budgeting part of that. So that's why we're asking them at the moment to put in a clear rationale for their spend around the participatory budgeting, what their outcomes and their measures are going to be in terms of what outcomes are going to be for the pupils, and then at the midpoint and the end of the year they'll report on what actually happened and what the impact has been for their school communities.
Okay, are you happy with that, Eileen?
Thanks. It's just I'm really quite passionate about the fact that I want everybody, if they possibly can, or as many people as you can, to be involved. And I know that we get people coming forward to, the school boards or whatever the terminology is nowadays. And I know that they're doing, a good job. But when you sit and you look at, the very small number of people who are engaging out, you say, in Carluke, well over 1,000 pupils, it must be a very low percentage. So that was all it was. It was just to hopefully, as we move on, that we will try and our very best to get as many people involved as we can. But thanks.
Okay, Julia, you have a hand up.
Yeah, thanks. It's in response to Eileen's question, and I was going to ask Laura if she's able to perhaps comment on. I know from my local school, the choices made for the participatory budgeting were a small number of a lot of different options, and actually maybe you're able to comment on the equity deputy heads that we have now in I think almost every school, and also I can imagine that this will touch on to the 6 modern apprentices that the Youth Family and Community Learning Service have just recruited, and they've just started to hear our youth voice and engage with young people in ways that they wish to, and in places they wish to, and schools will be a part of that. I don't know whether you're able to add more flesh to that bone, Laura.
Yeah, some of our schools have got equity deputy head teachers or equity principal teachers that they've funded through their Pupil Equity Fund or their Scottish Attainment Challenge Fund. And some of these people lead this kind of initiative and are maybe leading this area within their school. But certainly what I'm hearing from them, we meet regularly with our leads, and what we're hearing from them is this participatory budgeting process has actually been very valuable, because we have really heard from the pupils that are affected by poverty the most, and the ideas that they have come up with about things that school staff would never have thought of that are impacting on these pupils and families. And the fact that these ideas have then come to the fore and went to a vote, and in some places have actually crossed the line and made the vote, and they're the winning option, if you like. And I know that some schools, although they've had 3 options and maybe the number 1 is the one that the spend's going on, there are some schools have said that if they've got money left, or if option 1 doesn't cost quite as much as they anticipated, then they'll look at option 2 and option 3. And other schools are saying, well, actually, we're going to alter our plans and we're going to make sure we can include some of these other things as well. So it has been really good from a pupil voice point of view, part of the UNCRC and the rights of the child. I think it's been a really positive process for education resources into hearing the voice of our most vulnerable pupils and using that in a positive way to make effective change.
Okay, I see no other hands up.
No, but I just want to finish off by saying the proof of the pudding is always in the eating, and we can talk about it and we can say what we like and we can have whoever we like in schools, but I think it's something that we'll need to revisit and come back to, because it is important, very important, and it is important that, we see what's happening and that it is getting spread out properly. And each of us that's sitting here today will probably have different ideas of what we think is right or we don't think is right, or what we would like or we wouldn't like. And then between us all, we probably would get some kind of answer that would serve us all a wee bit. So I thank you very much for your presentation, and it's excellent. And I'm very interested. I'm very interested just to see how eventually it pans out. So it is an ongoing piece of work and a progressive piece of work. So I'm assuming that once we get it all started and once we go to look at it, then it can come back and then we can have another assessment or another look at it. But thanks very much.
Thanks.
Right, Laura, thank you very much for that. That's great. Will we get a quarterly update on these figures? Is that the plan, effectively?
Yeah, we can give you probably an end of year update. It's probably the end of the financial year is the next point that schools will report on how that spend has progressed. But what we'll do is, in the meantime, we're trying to get some case studies for you so that we've got some real school examples of how they've engaged. And at the end of the year, we'll get the impact as well of what the impact has been.
Brilliant.
Chair, okay. I'm sorry to interrupt, Chair, sorry. But see, when you get your real school, your what do you call it? What did you just say there?
Case studies.
Case studies. Couldn't think of. Well, I hope you'll give us warts and all, because sometimes when we're sitting here, they'll give you case studies and everyone's, absolutely first class and brilliant and it's all worked out well, which is well and good. But if there is any hiccups, go through the school, and you don't even need to name the school. It doesn't necessarily asking you to name or anything else. But I think we should also be able to know, well, what happened there, this didn't work or something else. So is it going forward, we would know, well, maybe we need to have a wee look at this, or maybe we need to do some more work somewhere else. So when you're looking at case studies, I hope it'll be a good mixture. Thank you.
What we are going to do towards kind of February time, towards the end of the financial year, is we're going to do a consultation exercise with our schools around the participatory budgeting process to see what worked well, what the challenges were, what were the things that we've come up against, so that if we are doing this again, we don't know if we are at the moment, but if we are doing this again, particularly around the pupil equity funding, what is the learning from it? What can we do, and what can we change to try and make things better, both for the schools, but more importantly for the young people and the families that the money affects. So absolutely, we'll be using that going forward, and we can share that with you.
Right. Okay. Eileen, have we drained the well dry now? Can we stop?
Yes, thanks very much. Sorry.
Okay, right. Fine. Okay, Laura, very good. That's us. You can move on now and go on. You don't have to hang around for any more.
Thanks very much. It was lovely to see everyone. Take care.
Okay, thanks very much. Right. Now we will move on to the next item, which is item 5, and this is Alistair McKinnon, I think, and Kirsty or Kirsty Maguire, who are going to speak to it. This is pages 19 to 24, Household Waste and Waste Recycling Centre Booking System. This is the new Carluke pilot. Alistair, over to you.
Hi, Chair. It'll be Kirsty. It'll take you through the report.
Right.
Okay. Hi, thanks, Chair. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having us on today. I'm just going to start by just taking you through the report, just a kind of a summary of the report, the main points of it. So what we're looking to do is to implement a booking system at our civic community site, our Household Waste and Recycling Centre, which is in Carluke. You'll know that the council has 6 civic community sites in total, only one of which is still managed by the council. The sites are well used, and it seems everyone seems to visit at the same time. So the sites are either very, very busy, or they can be quiet. And when they're busy, we have lengthy queues, which causes a lot of frustration for members of the public who are waiting to use the sites. That can often overspill, and it can cause aggression towards site staff and sometimes verbal abuse. When the sites are really busy, the queuing traffic on the access roads can also cause problems for local businesses. So we do tend to get some complaints because suppliers can't get access to business premises and customers can't get access. Those of you, some of you may know that we did previously have a booking system at Carluke CA site. That was for vans and trailers. We pulled the booking system in March 2020 when COVID struck and we had the lockdown, which resulted in the site closing for 3 months. But the booking system was very beneficial. It did allow us to control the numbers of vans and trailers on the site. It did speed up access to the site. We didn't have the same queues, and it did prevent a lot of the abuse that the site staff were getting at the time. The only issue with it was it wasn't particularly convenient for members of the public because we could only make bookings during normal working hours because it wasn't an online system. It was facilitated by the council's customer contact centre. So, for example, if you wanted to make a booking on a Saturday morning, you'd have to wait until the Monday before you could access the contact centre. In terms of use of booking systems, 17 local authorities throughout Scotland currently use booking systems. 4 use them for any type of vehicle that enters the site, and 13 use them for vans and trailers. There's an appendix at the back of the report that just lists all the different local authorities and the measures that they have in place. In terms of proposal, we're looking at implementing the booking system on a trial basis at Carluke. It will be predominantly an online system. However, there will still be the facility for people who do not have online access to make bookings via the contact centre. Obviously, that does limit to normal working hours, but it does mean that we're not leaving a sector of the society out with that. Our intention is that the booking system will go live on the 7th of February, and we wanted to avoid the busiest times over the Christmas and New Year periods when the sites are really, really well used, and that just, we want to get that by with before we introduce any changes. Communications will be developed in conjunction with our corporate communications team. We will put communications in place a minimum of 4 weeks before our go live date, but we will start to drip feed that as early as possible. That information out to the public. Intention is that after 6 months, we will review the pilot and we'll provide an update to the committee on the success of that. That's more or less the main points of the paper. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
All right, Poppy, you have a question.
Hi, Kirsty. This has been implemented for all vehicles at the site?
Yes, for all vehicles, Poppy.
It's just, from my point of view, from the people that contact me, I think this is going to be quite hard for anybody to accept. I think to go where you've got 13 sites where they're saying that they're only going to have bookings for vans and trailers and that you're going to implement it for everybody, I just think this is going to lead to a huge increase in fly tipping, and you're going to have a lot of very, very angry residents, and I just don't think it's something that's going to be accepted well within Carluke, and I just feel this has been forced upon people without any discussion, any consultation. I was actually told this was happening in January of this year, and when I asked about it, I was told, no, this isn't going ahead. And to be quite honest, it's going to make me personally look very foolish to the people who have been in touch asking about it. The other things you're saying about throwing it all at you at the one time, the people who work on the site are getting a lot of verbal abuse. I think that's actually working both ways, because I think the staff at the site are inclined to be a bit cheeky to some of the people that are turning up as well. So from my point of view, I don't think this is going to be a particularly good idea if it's going to apply to all vehicles going into the site.
I'm going to try and just take each of your points separately, so if I forget something, will you please remind me? So the first thing was in relation to whether it's for vans with trailers or everything. And you're right, so 13 out of the 17 councils who have a booking system in place have it for vans and trailers, but 2 of those had it for all vehicles, and they're slowly reducing it down. So they're monitoring the impact of making it just about vans and trailers. One of the councils, Fife Council's, actually quite reluctant to do that because the booking system has been so successful for them. It's been successful in terms of getting people through the site quicker, less people being disappointed, reducing queuing times. It's been better for the guys to manage, and managing things like resources as well. So knowing when sites are going to be busier so that you can have the additional staff in place, being able to plan for things like site movement. We move skips. Every time we move a skip because it's full, we have to close the site. And I'm pretty sure all of you here know how that causes problems, how that results in complaints for you. So what we want to do is try and manage throughout the day when this happens, so that we can block out particular times within the diary, that we can do the site movements, so that if someone's coming from some of the furthest away areas of South Lanarkshire, and they're travelling maybe 40 minutes to get to the site, they've got a degree of a guarantee that they're going to get access, whereas just now, they don't have that, so they can travel for half an hour, 40 minutes, and they can wait outside for half an hour, 40 minutes. So I think that's why it's important that and it is just a pilot, Councillor Corbett, so I think that's why we want to make sure that the pilot covers all vehicles rather than just vans and trailers at this point in time. We will review it, we will be consulting, we will be issuing customer satisfaction surveys, either via email or we'll be handing them out on site, and to get an honest opinion from people who use the site, because it is about, the sites are well used, and it is about making sure that people who want to dispose of their waste correctly can do so really quickly, and it doesn't have an impact on anyone round about.
Okay.
Are you all right with that, Poppy?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Kirsty.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, I got a list of people. The next was Lindsay.
Thanks, Richard. I suppose I would just probably back up Poppy's points, and I see that my colleagues Eileen and David are have got their hands up to comment as well. As local members, we get the amount of it is a particularly controversial hotspot, the amenity site in Carluke. And it should be for everyone, because it's obviously not just for Carluke, but it is, people do complain a lot about it. And I suppose the thing that I would be concerned about would be that if there was a rise in fly tipping because people got there and didn't realise and then just dumped their stuff anyway, because I know that's what was happening when the amenity site was closed at the start of COVID. The amount of fly tipping complaints I got in the local area was massive, and it was because, well, I presume it was because the amenity site was closed. So I'm just worried and concerned about the people who get there, don't realise you've got to book, and then just dump their stuff anyway because they don't want to bring it back. I suppose the proof will be in the pudding with the pilot, and by looks of it, whatever we decide to do, it'll go ahead anyway. I don't think, it doesn't look as if there's much leeway in the matter, but I'm just massively concerned, and I would like that noted, and I'm sure my ward colleagues will be the same.
Can I maybe just pick up on the points in relation to fly tipping? So through the Waste Managers Network, I've been in contact with local authorities that have booking systems in, and none of them have reported any increase in fly tipping. In fact, it seems to be the most common question that waste managers tend to get, is this connection between booking systems and fly tipping, and there's no evidence in any way that there's a link between that, a link with that. And secondly, for the first 4 to 6 weeks, we won't be turning anyone away who doesn't have a booking slot. So if you're coming after the 7th of February, we know not everyone visits every week. You know that you'll get people who only come during the summer months because they've got excess garden waste, or they've got hedges, or, they're doing larger scale projects or whatever. So they don't come all the time, so they won't know. So we will have a period of grace, and we will accommodate people during that period of time, because it's in our best interest that as many people as possible know, and as many people as possible don't turn up unless they have a booking system. The whole point of the booking system is to improve the speed of members of the public through the site, and to reduce any impact on access roads. So yeah, so we won't be turning people away that don't have a booking slot for the first 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, Lindsay, you all right with that? Right, next was David on the list.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on Lindsay's point, is obviously we want to try and make the recycling of waste as easy as possible. Absolutely. And if the booking system becomes a block to anyone, it will lead to fly tipping. And I know, Kirsty, you're saying there's been no evidence from other places, but Lindsay's right. When the amenity site was closed and people had come some long distance to dump, they just dumped it wherever they could. So my concern is, and my question is, Kirsty, what publicity are we putting in place to make people aware that this system is going to be trialled to see if it'll work? Because if we don't tell the public you have to book, they're going to just turn up on your doorstep and go, I'm here just to dump the rubbish. This is how it's always worked. I turn up, I wait my turn. So I think it's vital that we get that publicity right if the trial is ever going to work. Because if it doesn't, we're back to picking up rubbish out of farmers' fields.
No, absolutely agree with Councillor Shearer. It's important for us that we get the communication right, which is why we will be working with Tom Little, who's the head of communications, to make sure that we identify every opportunity we can to make sure the people who use the site know that there's a change coming. And that's why we have quite a generous lead-in time. It's a minimum of 4 weeks, but as I said previously, we won't just be starting on the 7th of January publicising this. We'll be for the long a lead-in as we possibly can. when we introduced, when the CA sites reopened at first, and we put in a lot of new rules for use of the CA sites. For example, there was social distancing on the sites. For a while, there was only certain types of waste that could come. So we made a series of animations alongside corporate communications, and we will do something similar for the booking system. We will use the website, we will use social media platforms, we will ask the site staff to make sure that they're handing out flyers. I said before, it's in all of our best interest to make sure as many people know about this as possible.
All right, David.
Yeah, as Eileen said on the previous item, the proof is in the eating. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Julia, you were next on the list as I have it.
It might be Eileen. Eileen, are you next?
Oh, right.
Do you want me to go first?
Well, the order you put your hand, you put your hands up in that order.
Thank you. I'm delighted to see this scheme coming in, and I can understand the concerns raised previously, but I would counter by suggesting that I don't know that the link between fly tipping and access to an amenity site is absolute. I would have some concern that people who are fly tipping don't even consider an amenity site, and actually we already do have that potential risk with the long queues and the skips that were full and required to be moved, and that led to huge delays and frustration. So certainly I'm well aware of constituent concerns coming from a fair distance and having a wasted journey. So all of that wraps up to, I'm delighted to see a trial, and whilst I can hear the concerns, I think the word is trial. We'll see what the outcome is of this, and the publicity will be key, and also that kind of soft start where people will have time to get used to a new system. So I have great hopes that this will, especially for the further reaches of Clydesdale and coming from a greater distance, people will know what that their journey isn't wasted, and they can dump their rubbish at a point that they've chosen. One question for Kirsty is, will the online system ask what type of rubbish? So that I know you have compactor skips now, which has probably increased the capacity massively, but if you know what type of rubbish is likely to build up over a day, you can plan for that, I'm presuming.
We don't have that. We haven't included that in any kind of our trials that we've done. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's not something that we can look at as it develops. What we're focusing on is typing times. You're right, we have purchased compaction units, which will really improve the capacity for green waste in the summer and for cardboard all year round. So that will help. We will be, in the email confirmation, we'll be asking people to segregate, reminding people to segregate their waste, because what we've found is that we're not getting the same recycling rates that we had pre-lockdown, because people are just putting everything into black bins and they're just putting it in the black skip. So we need to use this opportunity to encourage people to separate their waste better. And if that happens, we shouldn't have the same issues with capacity at the site, Councillor Marsh, as well. So no, but it is something that we can look at. We'd need to look at how we extracted the data and how we actually utilise that, but it is something that we can look at.
All right. Okay, then I think I've lost count now. I think, Eileen, you go next.
Okay. David Shearer asked, part of my question was obviously in the publicity part of it. And I think it was a wee bit unfortunate that because of the COVID and the repercussions of COVID, was that people were in their house and it was good weather and they were able to do a lot of DIY and refurbishments and whatever. And we all know the stories. There was no paint, there was no fencing, there was no nothing to be had anywhere because people were buying it in such quantities and then, refurbishing their house. But there was at one point an absolute dearth of, you could go walk, because I've done a lot of walking, 3-piece suites sitting in pavements, and just people get fed up, so they just put it out and hoped that somebody was going to probably pick it up, I am assuming. I think the good thing about this will be that most people now have either phones that can facilitate, emails and all the various stuff, and it's fewer people, older people might or might not, I don't know, but I think the bulk, I would say that at least 90% of the population will have access to, phones and be able to book, etc., etc. I, on a personal basis, have never had any difficulty. Know that I need to go to the place very often. I've always found when I went at whatever time, midweek, or I was okay. I think a lot of the problems stem from social media sites where people, were thrown back and forward stuff, and it was, fanning the flames of discontent type of thing. And I know two folk, it puts a weekly bet on how many times on this certain social media site somebody will ask, is the waste transfer station open, or is the cowp open? Because it seems to be, no matter how many times you tell folk, it is, they keep asking that question. So I really think the key to it all is good publicity and try to get people to, come along with you rather than against you. Well, if it is for 6 months, we'll need to see it. But again, I hope we get a true and accurate assessment at the end of it, because not just what you, Eileen Logan said, oh, she's not had any bother ever going. That's probably because I can go at, 3 o'clock in the day and somebody maybe can't go, I don't know. But I hope Watts and all will get a good, we'll get the assessments back and everything will be managed, because there is definitely still people who don't even bring in their bins if they don't get lifted. They just lie about all over the place. So, and there was a big increase of fly tipping, and I know, as I say, because I've seen it, and it's calmed down again, and I would like it to kind of calm down. But the key to all is to get a good assessment done and to hope that it works. And I'm a bit like Lindsay, because it just says Carluke, we take the brunt of everything that's going on here in Carluke, but it should be Clydesdale, because it is a Clydesdale waste transfer station, no Carluke. Just happened to be in Carluke, and I've been here long enough, I happen to know, because that was the place that had the spare capacity that could take it, because at one time it was looked at to go to Lanark because it was more central for folk all coming in, but we couldn't get the space, and that's why it landed at Carluke. So I think it's actually should be called Clydesdale, but that's just a wee aside. Thanks.
Kirsty, do you want to come back on that? Or?
No, just to say that it'll be worse than all. I mean, all councillors, your constituents will tell you that if there's a problem with it, they don't like it, they'll come back and they'll let you know. So it's not as if I've got anybody to hide with it. So yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Then, Catherine, your hand's going up and down for some reason.
Well, it was certainly up, but anyway, I just see that, Kirsty, this is for noting, and I don't know whether there's any leeway in changing anything that's in this report, because I think the 4-week grace for people who might not hear about it is too short. I think it should be through the whole 6 months of your pilot, because all your publicity has got to be online. So, I mean, people aren't going to read it. People won't hear about it. And some of my constituents, as Julia said as well, are travelling 40 miles to this waste station, and then to be turned back will go mental, because one of the things that I don't know whether local authorities will ever look into this is some of my constituents actually live next door to West Lothian. Now, wouldn't it be good for the zero carbon footprint if we could allow them to use West Lothian rather than having to travel like 40 miles to a waste station? So I would ask that you consider making the 4 weeks, instead of 4 weeks, make it the 6 months for one-offs, because not everybody's going to come in the first 4 weeks.
I think I absolutely acknowledge your point. My only concern is that we won't then get a true idea of how effective the system is, because if we're allowing people to come in without a booking for the entire duration of the pilot, it might skew the results a bit, because people should know, why am I taking the time to book? I'm still having to wait in a queue because there's people turning up without a booking system. So I think that's why we thought We've said 4. We can make it 6. Formally 6. There will always be some come and go. So if you've come from the other side of South Lanarkshire and this is the first time and the guys know who the regulars are, they recognise faces. If it's someone who genuinely they know is not being, would have no way of knowing that this system was in place and they've come from the other end of the council area, then the guys will let them in. There'll be some discretion in that. But that's my only concern, is that if we continue to make it for the 6 months, then the booking system, there would be little point in having the booking system in place. I'm not sure what anyone else thinks, but I don't think you get a true picture of how effective it will be.
Richard, can I come back? Is that okay?
Yeah.
No, that's fine, Kirsty. If that's what you think, it'll be up to other members to have their say as well, I suppose. But one of the other things I wanted to ask is the other sites within South Lanarkshire, then what are they doing? Because it's not mentioned in the report.
The other sites in South Lanarkshire have just been taken over by BIFA. So just for a bit of background, so there were contacts with Viridor, and Viridor have sold the business. So the contracts are in the process of being novated. So it wasn't an ideal time for us to make any further changes to those sites. But what our intention would be is that if this was, I'm not making any assumptions about the success or not of the pilot, but if this was successful and we decided to continue with this, then we would look at rolling it out to all the other areas.
Okay, right, now next was Eric.
Sorry, just had to unmute myself. Yeah, a couple of things. To say that when the recycling centres were closed, fly tipping rose is necessarily one bred the other would be a little bit too easy to say and a little bit too glib. I suspect there is some correlation between people turning up at closed recycling centres and there being a lot of tipping, but there were other factors like the fact that bulk uplifts were closed and garden waste uplifts were closed. But it always seems to me that if you want to persuade people to do things, the best way to do it is to make it the easiest thing for them to do, is to do the right thing. So if this makes it easier for people to drop off their waste and this is successful, then I think that would be great. I'm slightly dubious of it because I do think people will still turn up and be turned away, but that's my worry. But what I really wanted to ask was, if you want to reduce the amount of people going to the tip and reduce the amount of fly tipping, then you have to make it easier for them to do other things. And bringing back bulk uplifts was one, but bringing back garden waste uplifts, which I get every week, I get several requests about. Every community council I go to, I get asked about. Why can't we bring back garden waste uplifts? It would save an awful lot of trouble at the recycling centres. It would save a lot of waste being dumped. It would just be better all round.
The straight answer is that we don't have the resources to provide non-statutory services, and that's just the reality of it. We had a recruitment drive. We wanted to take on 13 temporary drivers. We've got 4. So it's not the fact that we're not trying to get additional staff in. We just aren't able to get. There's too many external factors. Everyone knows them. There's no point going back over them in this meeting. But it's causing us issues to get additional staff in that we're required to put those services back on. So in a lot of the days we're not even able to fully staff for frontline services or statutory services. So to bring back something that's not a legal requirement, we're just not in that position to do that at this point in time, unfortunately, Councillor Holford.
Okay. And I've said it.
Thank you then. And Kirsty, you also told me at the pre-meeting that one of the big problems we haven't got enough purple plastic to make the bins.
No, the dye to make the burgundy bins. Yeah, there's a shortage in the dye. So there's quite a few things going on in the background that's causing us some issues over and above just collecting the waste. But anyway, slowly but surely, hopefully get there in the end.
Right. Next then, Eric, if that's you, is Alex.
Thanks, Kirsty. I was told this morning that Clydesdale got a delivery in burgundy bins.
Yes, they did. Yeah, I know. And Blantyre are jealous because we've not got it.
Going back on to slightly the point that Catherine made, I'm content that you have a 4 to 6 week period when people will turn up regardless without a booking and regardless their waste will be taken. But I also think that out with that period, if you're in a quiet spell and someone turns up at the gate and there's not a queue, not someone waiting to be booked in, they have to be taken at any time, because that would really be ridiculous.
That's a discretion aspect I was referring to.
When you're not busy. And it was just to confirm that was going to happen.
Yes. It's maybe worthwhile mentioning as well, in the circumstances described here, Councillor Allison, when someone turns up and the site's not busy and they don't have a booking, someone had said 90%, I think it was Councillor Williams, 90% of people have mobile phones. So it's an online booking process. Very easy to make a booking from outside the site as well. You know?
Yeah, but that's bureaucracy for the sake of it. If they've turned up, there's no queue, nobody waiting, why do they then need to go and use their phone to make a booking?
No, I understand you're saying. Yeah, but in terms of even us collecting data and things, it would be good if we knew how many people were actually using the site in terms of reporting back to the committee, the review. But yeah,
I humbly suggest that providing the service is more important than collecting the data.
Yeah, I know that. Thank you.
Right, nearly at the end there, we've got Colin now.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, I've never been to a dump, so it's not really something that personally has impacted on me. But it's just a comment of Councillor McClyman, and I think it's a very good comment. If I was to go to the Clydesdale tip at Carluke, it would be a 70-mile round trip. If I was to go to the one in Sanquhar, it would be a 24-mile round trip. So in this age of the green agenda and making sure we reduce our carbon outputs, why can't we look at going forward using neighbouring waste facilities in neighbouring councils, particularly if there's a booking system, because it's not then going to be exploited by businesses, because you would know it was a residence, and it would be the way that we educate children from Dumfries and Galloway in Lead Hills Primary, because the school's a mile away rather than 12 miles to their local primary. There would be people that would be putting their waste in Dumfries and Galloway, would put it in ours, or East Ayrshire or wherever. But that's just something for going forward. But on the lockdown basis and not an increase in fly tipping, or the closing of tips and not an increase in fly tipping, during lockdown I somehow managed to grow 3 old sofas. And it just, to say that it doesn't have an impact, I just wonder if the impact with lack of access to a facility is an impact to the local authority, because that's something we can monitor rather than things that are dumped on private land, because that's then our responsibility rather than the local authority as landowners. But it's really just a point on the Catherine McClymon's comment, which I think would be something that out with this could be looked at and moved forward. Thanks.
Okay, it's maybe just clear. I think everyone's in agreement that we did see an increase in fly tipping through lockdown. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. I think the difference is whether there's a link to a requirement to book and an increase in fly tipping. It's just that's not something that that local authorities are reporting that have implemented this system already.
Thank you.
Right, I think, well, I can see no other hands up. So, great. Well, thank you very much, Kirsty. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And Alistair, thank you too. And as Aileen says, I think the proof of the pudding.
No, I know.
Will be in the eating.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much for your time.
All right.
Enjoy
Thanks
the
very much indeed.
Bye-bye.
Right. Bye. Well done. Okay. Well, yes, it is. It's going to be interesting to see how that develops. Okay, we've now got to number 6 on the agenda, the community grant applications. I'm scratching my head just exactly how to do this. Catherine, did you and Julia, do you have anything else other than the first one that you need to represent yourself for?
Yes, Chair. Braehead Village Trust. I don't believe Catherine has declared an interest on that item, though.
Chair, possibly the best way to handle it, with your permission, is maybe to take an apologies. I think we've got 2 item E's on this. It should be F for Braehead Village Trust, but perhaps to deal with the applications B to E first, and then that would allow, if we do move on to F, and then finally A, and that means when you leave, Councillor Horsham is just chairing that one application, if that's acceptable to you.
And I think that's fine. So what we'll do then is...
Chair, excuse me, Chair. Sorry, yeah. I've just been reminded that I'm a member of Crawford John Heritage Venture Trust, so that's item B. It's the problem of not writing cheques anymore. It's just direct debit. I'd forgotten about that. So I won't be able to stay for B either.
Oh Lord, right? Okay. Well, then what we'll do is we will do C, D, and E first. Are we all right with that?
Yep.
Okay. Right. And before we do that, I might jump ahead actually, because it's something I wanted to say. Under item 3 in the grants, you will notice not item 3, item 5, the financial implications. It's a point we brought up before, but it is an interesting one. I don't know where we go with it, and we've tried to do something with it. We've still got, there's a fair amount of money sitting there in the community grants, and we're not using it very fast. And I know we've talked about different ways of alerting people, putting the news out, spreading information about the fact that these grants are available. So I don't think I'm not really bringing it up for anyone unless they've got any more bright ideas as to how we can disperse this information. But I thought I would highlight it, that's all, before we move on. Eric, you've got a point.
Yeah, all I was going to say was, and I know I'll get shot down in flames for this, because we've got reasons for why we give proportions of money that we give. But should we not temporarily lighten the rein on, or reduce the restrictions that we put on the amounts of money that we pay out when people apply for a grant, to consider whether it might be appropriate to give, for a limited period, the end of this year, 100% of what they apply for, or whatever? Would that be totally unreasonable? I realise in the long term there's a danger you set a precedent, but if it was made clear that there was a good reason for doing it and a short-term need for doing it, and I know I'm going to get shot down for it when Susan's hand goes up, so I know I've broken a rule somewhere, and Eileen's not going to like it, but there we are. I just think it ought to be said, that's all.
Right, Susan, I'll let you fire first.
All I was going to say, in terms of the publicity side of things, we did look about extracting data, but this system doesn't collect email addresses, so it would have been costly to the council to write to a number of groups. I know that was suggested. Tom Little has put a sort of pictorial image on the council's social media, Facebook, to publicise the community grants. We did raise it with him. In terms of the criteria, obviously there's 4 areas within South Lanarkshire, and we try to have some degree of consistency, but ultimately it is up to the committee what amount they want to award. So it really is for the decision. We obviously try to make recommendations in similar groups and similar areas. We try to be consistent, and we have a general guide, but ultimately it is for each area committee to decide the amount of award.
So are you saying then that if we were to go around our own area committee, we could act independently from the others, and therefore we could maybe meet or or pass a paper around to let people express their opinions and views on this, and then we can act on that on a majority basis?
It certainly, as I say, the applications in this report are just recommendations. So it's for each area committee to decide. So, for example, yeah, you could award the full amount if that's what you want to do. So ultimately, it is for each area committee to do, and that's. But we try to have some sort of degree. The point of the scheme, I think, and in previous years, obviously, when the money. When groups were meeting and sometimes the money would run out, the idea was it is a contribution to a project, so it's not supposed to fund the whole, it's to encourage the community to also do their bit. But in terms of what's put in front of you, it's absolutely for the committee to decide how it wants to award.
Because last time, sorry, I'll let you in a second. Last time I think we discussed this, we thought if we did this in the middle of the year, then we have been unfair to previous applicants. Whether we go back to previous applicants and say they can have it all or what, I don't know how that works.
No, you couldn't. You obviously couldn't change the decision once the award has been made. But I think that has been in the past. It's obviously a balance of throughout the financial year and how much you award. And sometimes traditionally towards the end of the financial year, there might have been a pot of money or a sum of money, and perhaps the committee was a wee bit more prudent at the start of the year. So it can sometimes be quite a difficult thing to balance in terms of fairness and two groups. So it can be tricky, albeit it's looking quite healthy just now, your sums of money.
Okay, I've got another point. I'll come back. Eileen, do you want to go?
Thanks very much, Chair. And I know we've discussed this before. One of the difficulties I have is that if you are seen to be the rules and the regulations to start with are there for a very good purpose. We are not, we have to be careful, that it's a bona fide, group that are serving the community. There are no sort of any barriers put in place. You can come in, so all that is in place for very, very good reasons. And one of the things that, and I have been fastidious about this, all my working time as a councillor. We're nearly a new council election time. I mean, I don't know, it's about another 3 meetings of this if we're lucky, even before the financial, sort of year. But we're actually coming into a new council era next year. And you need to be careful that, you're not seen to be, maybe people accuse you of a election, pandering, electioneering or doing something that, to try, not saying to get votes, but we have to be very, very careful about what we're doing. And if people before have asked for that and we gave them that, that's fine. And now we've got this, because it's not the first time that one area did spend all their money very early on and did try and come to see if they could poach some of the other areas who were taking it, slowly, bit by bit by bit by bit. And the other thing that was always fastidious was people shouldn't, or groups, should I say, shouldn't get into the habit of thinking that every year, oh, I can get that, and they put that into maybe their, what would be our running cost for the year, what would we get in, and we had that once where people were virtually accusing the council of shutting their group because we had enough and hadn't enough money to, to give them what they were looking for, and they said, but we depend on that. So there was always that it should never be that any group had to depend on this money, because for various reasons, it might not be there. So it's fraught with a lot of difficulties. And I, for one, if we were going to change the system, I think it should be the new council that would change the system if that's required. If we feel that the £1,000 should maybe go up to 2, or I don't know, but it should be a new council who next year, I mean, it's not that far away. I think it's just that, May would be, it'll be 5.5 months till there's a new council, or 6. So it's fraught with a lot of dangers if you start in my view, if you start tinkering with it and you start touching different stuff. And I know that no matter what you all do or say, I would be putting in that I was objecting and I would want it noted if nobody else was agreeing with me. I think for me, it works away the now. It's no our fault we had this pandemic has caused no end of trouble, right enough. People are slowly getting back up onto, their groups, and they're slowly getting themselves back up and organised, because I know 3 that's starting up this week that had never started up before. And I think it'll all come back again, but I don't think it's right that we should touch anything just so close to an election where new folk, if it is new folk or whatever, I think that's when we should be looking at it. Thank you.
Eileen, thank you. I mean, a very good point indeed. I tell you what, Susan, I'll leave you to the end and let the others come in, because they may have things to say that you can then answer all of the points at the end. Is that all right?
Yes, that's fine, Chair.
Okay, fine. I think that, I can't remember, Catherine was next, then Alex, and then Colin.
Thanks, Chair. No, I agree with Eric. I was quite pleased that he actually suggested that we maybe use a wee bit more of the money. I disagree with Eileen, because I don't think what we're trying to do is to change the legislation that we have. I mean, when I was chair, I used to quite often near the end of the year give a wee bit more than normal, and it was up to the nearly £1,000 on most occasions. We asked for the money to be carried forward. So why ask for it to be carried forward, not to use it? I think we should perhaps, if everybody's agreeing, obviously each one will be in the merits. If the group, if it's in their proper criteria and they're allowed to get the full amount, why not give them it? And explain in the letter, maybe just to cover Eileen's point, is due to this year being a bit different and a carry forward from last year, we've managed to give you the full award this time, but not to expect it every year. And I don't think that should be too problematic in my mind.
Okay, Catherine. Alex.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly what Catherine does. The 2 main points are we've got extra money carried over to assist with COVID recovery, and in the past it has been varied. So therefore I would propose right now we give 100% of what is being asked. And if we need to reduce later on in the year, which is in the unlikely position, that is still what we have done in the past. So therefore I propose here and now 100% of what has been asked for.
Are you, sorry Colin, just give me a second, are you saying as of now, i.e. the grants in front of us would be the initial beneficiaries of 100%?
We can only decide about the ones in front of us today.
And I'll second that.
All right. Okay, let's move on. Colin first.
Well, I agree, but 3 meetings ago, Councillor Horsham raised this and I backed him on it, and we were shot down in flames because it was such a, well, the situation that we're in is very short term, that I agree with what everyone has said and what Councillor Holford has said, but we should put in that it's a sunset clause on it, that it ends at the end of this financial year, because we've got this money, and if it goes, it goes, and if it doesn't go, it doesn't go. But we're not carrying it forward and putting something on the next council's back that they didn't agree to, and it hopefully accommodates Councillor Logan then.
Okay, can I, Susan, you're being pushed back. Do you want to come back now, Susan, or wait?
Just to say like that again, if I guess if your instruction that the grants that come forward for the groups that are applying, that my understanding is you're looking to give them 100% of what they're asking for. I mean, we can certainly put the amount requested and recommend that amount. As I say, then it would be for the committee to come to an agreement to say they're happy with that, or there might be individual applications that maybe the committee would have a different view. Certainly, as I say, we work to a criteria, but ultimately it's for the suggested amount, and you can still take that decision at each area committee. As I say, it's for you. We would certainly still work within the parameters of the criteria of applications going forward in terms of the constitution and what they apply for. And as I say, there is certain things like uniformed organisations we normally have a sort of standard amount, but certainly as officers' recommendations, and it is normally meant to be a contribution, but there's nothing to say that we couldn't put forward whatever they apply for the recommendation, and then it's up to the committee, as I say, to take that decision on the applications as they come through to the area committee.
Okay, thank you. I think Eric, or was it Mark who was up first? I can't remember. Eric.
Me on the list, apparently. But no, I was just going to say, we're not looking for a change of the rules, not looking for a change, or I'm not looking for a change of the rules. I'm not looking for a change of criteria. I would still like to see the same recommendations with the same criteria coming forward at all future meetings. All I'm saying is that as we are sitting here in a position where we have a surfeit of funds that we have carried forward, it would be good to exercise our discretion effectively as a one-off, although we may choose to exercise that as a one-off on 1 or 2 or 3 more occasions. But I'm just saying that at the position that we're in at the moment, we should exercise our discretion. No change of rules, no requirement for a sunset clause, therefore, because there isn't a change to the rules. It's just that we're sitting down here today looking at these funds and saying, we have some extra money, so why don't we give them 100% today? We can look at it again the next time and make a decision, but the criteria should remain the same generally going forward, unless, of course, the new council does have some different criteria.
Right.
And okay. just to bear in mind as well that sometimes if they apply for, a higher amount, and some of it doesn't qualify for the full grant, if you know what I mean. So without picking out any groups, they may apply for a certain amount, but within that they've asked for things, and we sort of break it down to say, well, that bit wouldn't be covered. So in terms of, for an example, if they applied for £500, it wouldn't always necessarily be covered of what's in that. So that's the only other thing to highlight.
Well, I'm not suggesting we should give money away where we're not entitled to do so. I'm just thinking where we have the discretion, we could exercise the discretion.
Yeah, and as it's officers' recommendations, then obviously that's how we put a figure forward based on the application itself.
Right, Mark.
No, as Colin said, we had a vote on this 3 meetings ago, and apart from myself and Colin, and I think Richard, everybody agreed that it was the amount, and to say this now, the money is still there. The money was there before, and it needed spent. And going back to the reason why I think maybe it's not getting spent as much, I think is access to microgrants through community councils as well, where it's easier, to get the full amount if it's £500. I think that might be one of the reasons why they're not going through this scheme. And I understand Eileen's point of views as well, and I would be happy for organisations to get more within the parameters Susan set down there, and we do have that discretion. But we did have this conversation 3 meetings ago, and we were told no, we couldn't do that. So that's
I think we voted no, didn't we? I think okay. Eileen, do you want to come back first?
The only point I want to raise is if we collectively, and it'll not be me, decide that, oh, well, they all could get 100%, but then we've just had Susan saying, which is correct, that some parts say, if the project is £1,000, and I'm just going to use that, then they've maybe put in, I would like £1,000, here's what I want. But as was said, just, by Susan, but maybe only 500 of that, for talking's sake, meets their criteria, i.e. the council criteria. So therefore, they would get £500 for the bits that fit, and the £500 that doesn't fit, then that's up to them. That's just their project. So we would part fund that and allow them to get, a look for that part. So basically, how can we today say, well, if that is the mood, we'll give everybody, everything they're asking for. Surely it would need to go back to yourself as the chair, the vice chair, whoever, that's Mark, isn't it? Sorry, Mark. And the officers, because you would need to double check, well, that bit wouldn't fit or this bit would, or whatever. Because you kind of just carte blanche say, well, let's give everybody everything they want. If there's parts of that doesn't fit, fit the criteria. Because again, if somebody else come in, had be saying, well, you gave it to them and you didn't say to them, well, it didn't fit.
Can I?
Could Susan answer that, or somebody answer that?
Can I come in there before Susan answers, Eileen, and just say that, take the example right now. Look at your documentation. You have got applicant, I won't take my one above it, you've got the Crawford John Heritage Venture Trust, okay? Because I have no part to do with that, so I am not involved.
Colin's expressed an interest in that one.
Yes, I know, but I can...
We'll pick another one.
Okay, I'll pick the Cooter. No, I won't. I'll pick the Lanark Coral. No one's got an interest in that. Right. Lanark Coral, it says 650 and then amount awarded 390, which is sticking to the 60% rule, which we've all agreed is the unwritten rule. Now, the point is, it says materials administration and publicity costs. Now, following Eileen's point or question, I have assumed, or I am assuming, that the eligible amounts are amounting to £650. However, under the rules, we are only granting 390. Am I wrong?
I don't know about this particular application, Chair, but what can happen is that they could, and I'm not saying that they have, but a group could have applied for a certain amount, and just to use Councillor Logan's, if they apply for £1,000, but maybe within that they've asked for equipment, materials, administration in terms of this one, but they could also maybe have said we're looking to provide food or some of the criteria which doesn't count, but they've still applied for £1,000, for example. So we would mark that down to say, so for all they've applied for that, what I could suggest is if the clerks at the agenda meetings put down the 100% of what qualifies. So, for example, they may apply for £800, but maybe what only qualifies is 600, and we put that forward. But it's just to point that out that whatever they apply for doesn't necessarily fall within the criteria. So it wouldn't always be appropriate to give them 100%, if you like, of what they're asking for. Does that make sense? But we could have that conversation with you at the agenda meeting to say from the amount they've applied for, X amount would qualify in terms of the 100%, if you like.
Sorry, I think I'm
sometimes breaks down, but
I think I might be being thick here. Let us take the bigger and district men's shed. Has anyone got anything with that one? No. Right.
No.
Okay. Amount requested £1,000. Now, you as officers have gone through that list.
Gone through, yeah.
And therefore, and you have looked at that list, and what they want it for? They want it for equipment.
Yes.
So you have basically said, okay, equipment fits the bill for the grant. We, however, are going to allocate, because that's the way we work, only 60%. But 100%, i.e. that whole £1,000 was eligible for a grant. This is what I'm trying to establish. So when you're applying, your officers trawl through yourself, you're looking at that, and maybe they applied for £2,000 for flower arranging and heaven knows what, and you discarded the flower arranging
amounts against different criteria. So they might say we're looking for £200 for food or something. I'm only using that as an example. The majority of the time, the amount they apply for will be correct, but sometimes they do break it down. Right. So probably in most occasions, the amount they apply for is correct in terms of that's the full amount. But obviously, that's a conversation that could be had at the agenda stage. But if you're minded to put the full amount, then the officers can put that forward if that's the full amount that would qualify. If that's what you want.
I'm trying to lead this to a conclusion for this meeting, because Alex is recommending that we start now. today. This meeting is the first time we apply this. Now, in order to do that, we need to be certain, if you like, and I presume you have the application forms.
Yeah, I have them, yeah.
Sitting in front of you,
yeah.
Where and I think we need to take, in this particular meeting, each item separately. I'm not going to bracket any of them together. And if we were to go forward as suggested, we would be looking at the applications, and you would be able to tell us that, let's say, on item A or B or C, whatever it was, that the amount requested falls legitimately within the amounts that are eligible for grant. And if that is the case, then we move forward and we can then say, okay, we will apply the full grant. So if you're able to say, yes, they fall within the range of acceptable requests, we can then vote on each one separately. But I think before we do that, I think we need to establish the principle on which we're going forward at this meeting. And therefore, I feel I'm not entirely sure how we do this, but I obviously clearly aware that of Eileen's reservations, and I don't know quite how we take that forward, whether she is simply, her objections are noted, and assuming that others agree, we move forward, or whether we have to have a vote on how we're going to treat these grants at this meeting. I'm asked, that's a big question mark, that.
Just to be clear, Chair, my proposal is that we were on C, D and E at the moment as the ones that everyone here has not declared an interest on, and I propose that they get 100% of eligible application request. So we don't need to go through them individually. It can be checked afterwards that whatever they have amount requested is all eligible, then it is paid out. We know the maximum that it could be, and it would only be less than that if the officers found out that some of the requested funds were not eligible.
Hang on, we've got two. Catherine and Julia have something to say, or did have.
That's how I thought we were going to progress, Alec. That would be the easiest way.
Okay, fine. Julia?
I was going to say similar, actually. I don't think we need to overcomplicate it. That I think it's whether the percentage is 60% or 100% is the question, and whatever is eligible or not eligible can be sorted out with officers according to the criteria later.
Okay, well, that's fine then. All right, well, I'll accept that. I'm fine with that. Now, the only person that we need to accommodate there in this case is Eileen. So what we're doing...
I'm disagreeing, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. So I think we just note that Eileen is disagreeing. I don't think we need to do anything else because
by the sound of it, you just note my dissent.
Right, I note the dissent. Okay, Alex has a proposal for items B, C, and D. And
no, it is C, D, and E. B.
Oh, is it C, D, and E? Sorry, C, D, and E. C, D, and E. Sorry, and therefore that's your proposal. And I'm prepared to second that.
I've already seconded it, but that's fine.
Oh, fine. Well, whatever. Okay. Good. Oh, yes, you did earlier on. All right. Well, so are we all agreed on that then? Okay. Good. Now, the next one then is we're going to start requiring people to leave. I'm going to keep the one I need to leave till the end. So the next one we're looking at is the Crawford John one, which is item B. So that Colin has to leave.
I'm away.
We'll invite you back in.
Okay, right. So the proposal there, Alex, are you going to go on proposing?
Yes, I can propose the same as the last time, that we give 100% of eligible request.
And I'll still second it.
That's fine. Okay, so now we've dealt with item.
You'll note my dissent for that as well.
Also dissent from Eileen as well. Okay. And then now, if I can scroll forward, the Bray Head Village Trust now.
Get Colin back.
No, you need to get Colin.
Yeah,
oh, yes, Colin back.
Give me a second. Yep.
I'll leave now, Chair. Invite me back.
Yeah.
So, well, Councillor Marsh, that'll be you finished because you've got two declarations.
It's gone.
Understand? Yeah. Okay, that's Councillor McGavigan back in chair.
Right, Alex, you want to make your proposal then? Oh no, you've done that. Sorry, I was calling. Right, now we've got the Braehead Village Trust. This is very complicated because Catherine, you are absenting yourself for that one, are you, or not?
No, it was Councillor Mars.
It was purely Mars, was it? Okay,
And she's,
right. So
she's
we can now
left the
vote
meeting,
then
yeah.
only on the Braehead Village Trust, which is item E. Okay, Alex, you might as well propose them all.
I propose once again that we give 100% of eligible request.
And I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Right, now...
Councillor Logan.
Record my dissent, thanks, if I don't have a second.
Well done, thank you. So now are we just left with item A?
That's correct.
So that leaves me and Catherine to withdraw, and that puts Mark now in charge of the meeting. Okay.
Can I ask if we're coming back in, or is that the end of the meeting now?
Chair, if you want, you coming back in for urgent business, there's just to finish the meeting to say there's no urgent business, so I can invite you back in. But if
there's no urgent business, that's fine. I'll just leave.
There's no urgent business.
Has anyone got any urgent business points? No? Right, okay, fine. Let's do it that way then. Mark takes over and Catherine and I will pull out, and that'll be it, okay? Mark can close the meeting. All right.
Thanks, Chair. Bye, Catherine.
Right, bye.
Thanks, Chair.
I take it we're still quota.
Yes.
No, it was just so it's item A. Alec, are you proposing this one?
Yes, can I just say, Susan, the same as we have dealt with the other applications today.
Okay, everybody agreed with that, yeah.
No, I don't agree.
Well, sorry, Councillor Logan, you're just saying, yeah.
And I think that's everything, Susan. The chair done the urgent business, so I think we can.
Can I maybe just check that Julia's not sitting waiting there? Because she went out quicker than we agreed that it was going to end, just for making sure.
I think
she's gone.
She knew that she had the two items, and I think it was only the urgent business, so she was aware of that.
Sorry for introduction.
No, not
no. So on behalf of the chair, I'll close this meeting and thank you for your attendance.